Hey everyone, welcome to The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. I am your host, Jen Amos, and today I have with me the CEO and founder of Skye Team, Morag Barrett. Morag, welcome to the show.
Hey Jen, glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we were talking a little bit offline about what the weather's looking right now in Colorado, and it sounds like the leaves are changing colors, or you're at least going to go somewhere where the leaves are changing colors.
Oh, it's beautiful. I tell you, when the fall colors come, it is stunning.
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, I know in our area as well. One thing that when I used to live in California, one thing that never changed were the leaves. It was like always green. Yeah. It was like, maybe succulents or cactus, nothing really changed unless you really went into, the mountains and stuff like that. And that's something I started to notice living out here in Virginia is just watching the greenery change and fall really coming in. And it gets me to appreciate the four seasons, despite the weather, the weather changes. It's like, it's worth it to see Mother Nature change and be so beautiful.
Well, you'd love Colorado. It's often said we have four seasons in one day. And in fact, it was only a few weeks ago, I think we had a 60-degree temperature drop. It went from the high 90s to snow.
Oh my
goodness. That certainly is one of the exciting bits of the transitions between the seasons living here in Colorado.
Oh yeah, that sounds definitely a lot more extreme than what I'm used to out here, which was already hard enough for me to adjust to. But to have that happen in one day, I remember my sister-in-law, she took a picture, literally the next day, it was snow. It was just packed out there. And I was like, wow, that's a dramatic change in weather. Yeah. Well, Morag, as you know, I always like to ask this question at the very beginning. As you know, it's interesting times. 2020 is a very interesting year for all of us. So I thought I'd check in with you. How are things going in this new normal for you?
I tell you, 2020 is the leadership crucible that has put us all on the spotlight, hasn't it? And I think
Absolutely.
Like everybody, it's felt like an emotional, not roller coaster, more like a washing machine. And people will say, well, how are you feeling? And certainly early in the pandemic, I had the 2 weeks of couch lock where it was shock and awe. Mm-hmm. And there have been days, much like Colorado seasons, where I think I've experienced every emotion all at the same time.
Yeah.
Both as a business owner, as a mother, for our own health, for our family. There is so much going on. Mm-hmm. And for me and the work that my team and I do, it's critical because it's great. It's easy being a great leader on the good days when things are going to plan. The true test is, how do we show up? How do we navigate the extra uncertainty of years like 2020? And so I'm looking forward to our conversation today, because if people are struggling, if they're unsure, then we're going to give them some tools and techniques that they can apply now to be at your best when the year and circumstances might be causing us to be at our worst.
Yeah, perfect. Well, let's go ahead and jump into that, Morag. For people that are learning about Skye Team for the first time, what do you want them to know about it in your company?
Oh my goodness. Well, first off, we have 8 corporate values. 4 of them are fun, because life is too short. But what we excel at in Skye Team is the human side of running a business. Whether you're a small startup, whether you're a 15 or a 50-year-old established business, I don't care what people have told you, business is personal and relationships matter. But often it's the human side that we get to only when things go wrong. And so what we do at Skye Team is we work with our clients in 3 ways. We design and deliver and facilitate high impact leadership programs for a cross section of leaders within your company. That's our one-to-many influence, giving a common language and framework for how do we give feedback, how do we resolve conflict, how do we delegate, how do we come together to deliver our company goals. Then we work with intact teams, so a leader and direct reports, just to say, around this table, do we have the same definition of success? How can we create an oasis of calm in this team and then connect up and downstream and with our customers and with our clients and community? And then our third influence is one-to-one as executive coaches, where we're laser-like in the support that we're giving to individual leaders wherever they are in their career and taking them from good to great.
Wow, I think that's really incredible. The key thing I heard from you is, like you said, humanizing business. I think that is very profound. And I feel like I don't know if it's just the recent decades or something, but people are looking for a deeper sense of purpose in their work, even if they're working in corporate. And yeah, we're not in the industrial age anymore. It's not just about being task oriented. It's about like, why am I doing this task? Like, what value am I giving to the company, and what am I getting out of this experience? And so I like that you provide the training that you do for not just the team of these companies, but also the executives.
Well, Jen, you've nailed it. And that was the premise of my second book, The Future-Proof Workplace, is that many of the habits and customs and attitudes that we have to work and career are still rooted in the Industrial Revolution. And it's so outdated, it's crazy. And we need to bring back that human side. And it reminds me, there's a fabulous quote by Dr. Maya Angelou, which is, people won't remember what you did or what you said, they will remember how you made them feel. And so in our work with leaders, whether it's one-on-one or one-on-many, it's the how do people feel in your presence when you're in the room and when you're not in the room? And how do you feel in your own presence? Because again, as leaders and as business owners, we've got that inner critic sometimes that is holding us back. And the way we talk to ourselves is as important as how we talk to and engage our teams. And so that's my passion, is the how do you connect to the heart and the head so that we can engage the hands of the people who work with and for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love your passion in this. And I love that I feel like in a culture where feelings matter, feelings that really matter today. And so I have in my notes here that you've been in business for 13 years. So congratulations. That's a really long time for anyone to be in business. I want to go back a little bit, and I'm curious to know, how did you get into business, and what inspired you to, have that mission to humanize business?
Well, that is such a great question, Jen. So I'm probably on my 5th career, but the reality is I was going to be an engineer. And so 80% of the clients that we work with at Skye Team are IT, technology, engineering, very logical, pragmatic thinkers. And I actually ended up in finance. So lending millions of pounds, because as you can guess from the accent, I'm originally from the UK, but I was lending millions of pounds through the bank that I worked with to companies in very different industries. And they would all come in with I've got the best widget in the world, and here's the cash flow forecast that's going to show we're going to make millions and millions. And what I realized was, it's not enough just to have a great idea. You have to also be able to rally the people who work with you and for you. And the companies that were successful in that banking career were the ones that did invest the time in the care and connection and the wellness, and to your point, the emotions of their employees. So that's why I pivoted into leadership development, doing that globally with an American company, which is what brought me to Colorado. And now working with teams and leaders to break down the politics, silos, and turf wars that are holding them back. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, let's talk for people that are maybe interested in working with you. Can you give us a couple of examples, and you don't have to mention names, but maybe clientele that you worked with, and what does it typically look like for a client to work with you?
So the first thing is, if you've ever gone home at the end of the day and said to your significant other or the dog, oh my goodness, you won't believe what happened at work today. Or maybe you're sitting in a meeting blindsided by the words and actions of a colleague. Or maybe you're sitting there thinking, well, that will never work, but not actually saying it. Those are all symptoms that say, give me a call. Because there is an underlying problem that's holding you back and breaking down the candor and debate needed to move the organization forward. And then when people work for us, for example, I was working with a senior executive leader just recently, and they had spent 2 years developing a brand new product to bring to market, only to find a competitor had seized the day and beaten them to it. And the team was in disarray. You can imagine their morale. There was recrimination, finger pointing, and blame. And when we came in, and what I did, I spoke to the leader, I spoke to key team members at all levels of the organization. It turned out it wasn't that the product and the idea wasn't good enough. It was that there was a lack of clarity around who was responsible for delivering each stage of that project. There was a lack of alignment around the priority and how they were going to come together to deliver that service. So what happened was we facilitated a number of different sessions with the leadership team to start with. We had to get the chip off the shoulder. We had to talk about the elephant in the room, you know, the one, the gorilla in the corner, the stinky fish, whatever it is. But we had to have those tough conversations that cleared the air in a way that allowed them to move forward as one voice to the rest of the organization. And then we were able to work with intact teams throughout that part of the company to rebuild confidence and excitement to get this project back on track. So remember, it was 2 years. They'd just been pipped to the post. Well, I'm telling you, within 6 months, they had turned it around.
Wow.
Turned it around, relaunched that project, and delivered even more results than they thought were exceptional. All because they focused on how they were going to work together versus the blame as to what had gone wrong.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
I think that's really powerful, Morag, and I appreciate you kind of painting that picture of the type of clientele that would want to work with you. It sounds like for people that are maybe afraid to rock the boat, you know, like in their team, or afraid to speak up, or, you know, like you said, go home at the end of the day and vent, but not necessarily like share that in the workplace.
Exactly.
There's some underlying issues, and there's maybe some like fear of communication for whatever reason. Can we talk a little bit about that? Like, why do you think that, you know, it's difficult to talk about the elephant in the room, the gorilla in the corner, you know, like afraid to rock the boat, all of those cliches? Why is that such an issue for a lot of companies?
Well, I think that's a two-part question. I think there's the outside-in pressure. Certainly when I joined my career, it was still the traditional hierarchy, and you go through the chain of command, and hey, you've only just started, what would you know, newbie? You've got to prove your worth. Well, when we're working in organizations at the rate of change in the fourth industrial revolution, 21st century, we can't wait 2 years for me to gain credibility to be able to say, I don't understand, or that will never work. So there are the myths and legends of organizational cultures that keep us stuck. And being able to articulate, what do we need to be, and how do we create a culture of candor in a way that moves us forward, are key leadership skills and conversations that need to be happening on an ongoing basis. So I think that's one answer, Jen, is that the situation, you know, the rumor of, well, remember 5 years ago, so-and-so got fired when they dared to say no. And who knows whether or not that person did or didn't. But the key is right now, what's the risk if I don't speak up? And then there's the internal dialogue, that trash talk that I talked about that says, well, that's the big wig of this, that, and the other. I can't possibly disagree. Well, maybe not in the meetings. You don't want to commit career suicide. But is there a way to have that conversation offline? Is there a way to get to know the human being behind the job title? Because all of the research shows that when we have a high quality relationship, when we know and trust each other, we can take off the mask and we can challenge and debate and deliver exceptional results together. So the answer is, there's the outside pressure of what the company tells us is appropriate, but there's also the inside pressure of being able to stand in our truth and have confidence in our perspective and voice that appropriately.
Yeah, I like a keyword appropriately, right? Because like you said, we don't want people to commit career suicide by blowing up in the conference room or in those meetings with the staff. And there is a tasteful way to do it. It's just about having the right tools to do that. And obviously, Morag, that's what you do with your company. Yeah.
I mean, I remember working with a senior executive in another organization who'd got a new team and been brought in to help bring this team together. But what the executive didn't realize is that they had a reputation for being volatile, literally from 1 minute highs to lows, to grading your work in a very public and demeaning way that ultimately kept people back. They didn't bring warnings of impending disaster and bad news. And during the team event that I facilitated, this executive did lose their rag. They did blow their top. And you could see, and these are all vice presidents. I mean, these are not people who are junior in their career. They've got water under the bridge, so to speak. But you could see that them shifting and not wanting to make eye contact, and ironically looking at me as the facilitator to help solve their issue. And I did. I was able to provide some in-moment coaching. We took a break, we came back, we reconvened, and that team came back together stronger than when they first arrived. But this is where the leadership journey is important, because they need to learn to be able to do that independently of having me in the room. And that's where the coaching and the tools and resources that we provide in our programs help give you a toolkit of choices in that moment, so that you can both exhibit your frustration with a team, but in a way that doesn't shut them down, but also challenge up, down, and sideways so that we can work more effectively together.
Yeah, Morag, you're like the therapist for companies and businesses and for execs. That's what it sounds like to me, because you're addressing feelings, you're, talking about the tools to communicate better, and how do you make that sustainable even after you're gone?
It's funny you should mention that, because my colleague Eric Spencer, he has a weekly event that he calls the Corporate Bartender. Just for that, because you know how we go into the bar and the bartender says, well, how are you doing? And then you spill your soul to a complete stranger. Yeah. So his whole philosophy is around, where do you go, certainly as you move through your career, or if you're a solopreneur, who can you go and vent to? But not in a way where you're just left hanging, which is what the dog will do. The dog will look and go, oh, that's sad, but doesn't help you move forward. Right. Working with a coach or working with a leadership development firm like Skye Team gives you a safe opportunity to let the pressure cooker valve release, but also then hold you accountable for how are you going to show up and be intentional tomorrow and the next time that this challenging situation arises.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So being in business for 13 years now, Morag, I have to ask you, what are you most proud of in the 13 years you've been in business? What stands out to you? What's like, that's the reason why I keep doing what I'm doing?
When I see the ripple effect, and my team and I, we start every Friday staff meeting with what we call ripples and joys. When we see the successes and the inspiration that our clients have achieved, we get goosebumps, and that's what makes it worthwhile. Because there are, if you Google the word leadership, I'm telling you, there are going to be, I did it yesterday for a keynote, 2,610 million results. Wow. If you Google the word leadership. I've added to that my articles, my books, and so on. So culpable negligence here, where you can't process that many suggested leadership styles. But when you can identify your own definition of what makes for a great leader, when you can be intentional about how you show up, when you can tap into your potential and your team, wow, that's what I love about the job that we do, is helping leaders who've got the courage to step into their own truth, achieve amazing results.
It's amazing. Beautiful.
It's the best.
Yeah, I can tell. I can feel your energy. I can feel your energy, Morag. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about Skye Team?
So we work with companies you know, and we work with companies and individuals you've never heard of. We just love, and we work on abundance and generosity as our middle name. So if somebody calls me and contacts me on LinkedIn, I promise I respond. If you just want to have a quick call and say, how do I handle? I'm going to help, because I love sharing those tools and resources. But our passion is, how do you achieve outstanding results by connecting and building powerful relationships with everybody who works with and for you. And whether you're a solopreneur, or as I said at the beginning, a big international company, it's the relationships that make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so powerful. I think you really practice what you preach when it comes to humanizing businesses and saying that business is personal. Like, I feel like that should be the title of this conversation, either one of those. But, so thank you so much for sharing that and talking about Skye Team. Before we go, I do have one more question, if you don't mind me asking. I do want to flip over to really the entrepreneurial journey that you've been on in these last 13 years. And so to our small business owners and entrepreneurs listening to the Thoughtful Entrepreneur, what are some, wisdoms of advice, like tips that you want to share with them to create a sustainable business, just like what you have for the last 13 years?
So it's still a journey that I'm learning. I do know this is the hardest I've ever worked in my whole career. Corporate was easy by comparison, because as a business owner, you're either building it, delivering it, selling it, dealing with the admin. There is always more to do than the time available. So one of my early learnings that I wish I'd had sooner was to delegate. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I should. And to find your ally. I mean, I talk about allies in my first book, Cultivate. But you need somebody, and I shared it earlier in our conversation, that you can go and vent to, somebody who's going to be help hold you accountable, to help you to prioritize all of your ideas and potential projects. And that can help move you forward in a very focused way. Mm-hmm. So for me, what's made Skye Team successful is getting a great team, initially as 1099s and now as W-2 employees. Mm-hmm. Learning to get out of my own head and let people celebrate the success and the great work that we're doing. Mm-hmm. And making sure that we're paying attention not just to the numbers, but to the relationship and the community around us. Because one without the other is not going to build you a sustainable business.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. It's not just working to work. It's not just completing a task to complete a task. It's realizing that you're doing it with other people, other humans who have different backgrounds and different reasons why they're in this company, but all share a common theme or the common mission that the company has. And so, beautifully said, Morag. I want to thank you so much, for your time. I feel like I received a lot of information from you and knowledge, and I feel like our listeners will as well. Any closing thoughts before we go? I want to make sure that I pull out everything I can from you before we officially wrap up.
So my closing thoughts is you cannot be successful in business or life unless you are successful in nurturing the relationships around you. Mm-hmm. Professional, personal, social. Don't underestimate the number of people who are in your corner and celebrating you and wanting you to be successful. So ask for that help. Lean on others, because together we can achieve so much more.
Wonderful. Morag, it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Jen. The time has flown.
It did. It happens all the time. I wish I can stay on longer, but all good things must come to an end. So thank you again. And to our listeners, again, this is Morag Barrett. She is the CEO and founder of Skye Team, and you can learn more about our company at SkyeTeam.com. That's spelled SkyeTeam.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll chat with you in the next episode. Tune in next time.